Hi everyone, welcome to the session of our web series, Fireside Chat with Champions, in which we interview global business leaders, asking them crowdsourced questions relevant to the biggest challenge we face today, COVID-19 and its impact on the business in society and the way we can steer ourselves clear of those uncertainties. Today we have with us Carl Vause, CEO of Soft Robotics Incorporated, WEF, that's World Economic Forum, Global Tech Pioneer, and Fast Company, most innovative robotics company. Soft Robotics Incorporated is an early stage company focused on developing and commercializing the revolutionary soft robotic technology developed by the Whitesides Research Group at Harvard University. Prior to joining Soft Robotics, Carl had been having an awesome career working with companies with portfolio of close to $500 million in annual revenues. Carl holds a BSEE from Virginia Military Institute and an MBA from London Business School. He began his career as a Naval Flight Officer in United States Navy, retiring from the Naval Reserves in 2013. Thanks, Carl, for accepting our invitation. I would request you to let our viewers know a bit more about you and your current interests and activities. Floor is yours, Carl.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Deepak. And it's great to be here and have this conversation. So, as you mentioned, I'm an electrical engineer. So I think about things as an engineer. I also have a business degree, and I'm kind of all things technical and aerospace related. And so, my hobbies are really aviation, aerospace. And I spend a lot of time working on. But I like to think one of the interesting things is an engineering background with a business degree lets me really think about things on both the technical side and the business side. And so that quite often you'll see me looking at business problems with a data slant to it, an analytics slant to it, and then thinking about how to develop a hypothesis and use information data to move that hypothesis forward.
Awesome, Carl. So, Carl, actually, you have been working on something which is very, very fascinating. Like, I'll say that holy grail of robotics, holding things. Very simple to do for human beings, very difficult for machine. So, I've been tracking you and you've been doing awesome work. So, Carl, today we'll be talking about a sector very critical for both, for common man, the consumer, as well as the common man, the worker. Manufacturing being part of WEF's agenda also when they talk about IE 4.0. And I've been part of their advanced manufacturing and production initiative and interacting with stakeholders for preparing our spring 2020 meeting, which is going to start tomorrow. So we are seeing a lot of concern there. For example, commercial aviation companies are experiencing slowdown demand of aircraft because passengers are stopped traveling. Airlines are also bleeding because the deliveries have been deferred. Demand for spares has gone down. Similarly, in automobile sector, which is the lion's share of manufacturing, there is a disruption in China. There is disruption in Europe where the manufacturing is stopped. Lockdowns are happening in US and some of the biggest market of Southeast Asia. The demand is virtually zero. And also in product and consumer product and retail sector, I was going through a study by Deloitte which says that actually 41% of the world, it doesn't feel safe to go to malls to buy things. So there are a lot of concerns when we talk about manufacturing. So that brings us to our first question. How do you see impact of COVID-19 on business globally, especially manufacturing, while the global demand for most commodities is decreasing in conventional sector? Where do you see the green shoots coming up in manufacturing?
So I think the green shoots, I do think we'll see it restart. I do think one of the challenges, though, is we've seen throughout the COVID crisis is a lot of companies didn't really appreciate their full supply chain, their end-to-end supply chain. And I talked to one customer who, in this example, they had a critical secondary supplier who was in the Wuhan area. And so in January, they went out of stock on a component called their supplier, and their supplier said, well, we get components out of Wuhan and Wuhan's in lockdown. And so I think what you're going to see is you're really going to see people try to understand best is what is their supply chain and how does it run end to end. I think one of the green shoots we're going to see is as we've started to turn manufacturing back on, the number one thing is worker safety, right? We've always been focused on worker safety, but this gives us an opportunity to really look at how are people interacting in manufacturing, how are we protecting people, and we talk about you return and reconfigure, right? And so we're reconfiguring manufacturing as part of the COVID, but I think out of that is going to come some very innovative ways of doing work that we haven't thought about before.
Awesome, very well articulated. So I also fully agree that the safety is of paramount importance, both in terms of how to keep the social distancing, also to see to it that you are having early signs in case something goes wrong with someone, so that the infection can be minimized. So that's bring us to something which is the topic we talk about. That's the labor. So impact of COVID and subsequent lockdowns and imminent recession will lead to lots of losses in the job, right? So you'll find a lot of retrenchment happening, and you have already seen that actually a lot of countries, they are becoming paranoid about the investment going out, because the labor are a big issue. So you have seen that India, Vietnam, in order to get the investment which are from the companies which are leaving China, they have diluted their labor laws, right? And all those things are going to impact the manufacturing automation, right? So there is going to be, maybe you can have a better perspective on that, whether you see that because of the lack of demand, the need of automation is going to go down, or because of lack of labor, the automation demand is going to go up. So we would like to understand this complex challenge from you, that where do you see the manufacturing automation going in these troubled times?
So that's a very important question and a very important topic, Deepak. And I'll step back and I'll say, pre-COVID years, in the past 3 to 4 years, we've seen a mega trend of labor scarcity, and it runs counterintuitive. But if you think about the average age, with the exception of India and a couple other countries, the majority of the developed economies are dominated by old retiring people, right? You have Japan, which really is the oldest economy. China, the average age in China is actually only 1 year younger than the average age in Japan. So China is becoming a much more, older demographic society, and then throughout Europe, into the United States, even into Central South America. And so you do have the bright spots of India, which has a vibrant, emerging labor supply, but these mature economies have struggled. And what we've seen is they've been adopting automation for some time, but they've been putting it off. And really, in the United States, I would say over the last 4 years, we've seen industries that just rely on labor have really struggled. And so they're trying to bring in automation, not to displace workers or put people out of a job, but to maintain production, to maintain the competitive nature. And we actually see in many of these industries, which we do a lot of work in food, which we'll talk a lot about. We do a lot of work in consumer goods, manufacturing, packaging, and then e-commerce and logistics. These industries actually are able to build their business and expand. And so our customers don't eliminate jobs. They actually automate the bad jobs and then use the valuable human to do the important work. And so we really talk about the robot-human alliance, is let the robots do the bad jobs and let the humans do the important jobs. And so I do think what we're seeing now in COVID is we're seeing companies say, wow, I now have a worker safety problem. People are going to be, I think, for a long time concerned about their own safety, about working in these high density areas. Maybe I should now figure out how to automate some of these dull, dirty, dangerous jobs, and then figure out how people can do the high value jobs and stay safe. And so we are seeing a lot of that move forward. I could talk a lot about the food industry, because I think the food industry is one where you both have had labor scarcity. It's been very hard to get to maintain and hire people into these jobs. But we also have food safety, which has been a major concern. And then food is a sustainability issue. So we don't have enough people. We want to do everything we can to keep food safe, keep food clean. And then throwing away food is bad for everyone. It's food waste. And what we're seeing today, unfortunately, is we're seeing across the world is farmers are culling their herds because they can't get the animals to market. We have farmers are plowing under fields of ripe vegetables, ripe berries, because the supply chain is broken. And the reason that supply chain is broken is because it's very reliant upon human labor. And now that we've had to take the human labor out of the equation, the farmers don't have the ability to get their product to market. And I think that is something where We saw early stages of adoption of robotics and automation adoption in the food supply chain over the past 2 years, and I think you'll see acceleration now as we want to build a resilient supply chain so we can feed people. I know in the United States right now we're having meat and milk rations in the U.S. And so we will probably see a lot of the proteins disappear from the grocery stores in the coming days and weeks. And so I think that is something where, back to your question, it's getting people to do these jobs has been difficult. We've noticed the strain on the supply chain, and now COVID has really brought it to a crisis point.
Perfect, very well articulated, and in fact, as I was saying, that I've been a big admirer of the work you guys are doing. So I love something which was written on your website, which talks about let humans do things they like and which are safe for them, and let machine manage the routine, boring as well as unsafe job. So that's very, very, I'm saying that's the crux of the issue, that can we ensure that we don't struggle just because there are some difficult jobs which needs to be done. And the human safety is becoming another big challenge, and where actually the right type of automation is very critical, because now the safety is a concern because you can infect people, right? And I would love that my food comes to me untouched, rather than actually going through supply chain which had 100 people touching it, and one of them could have been a carrier. So you rightly, you pointed it very, very well, that actually, we need to have automation, but we have to ensure that it is done in a way where economic impact on lives of people can be taken care of. Would you wanted to add something to that?
Yes, I do. I think you made two very important points, and just the latter you made is, we talk about the human robot alliance and the just transition, right? Is making sure that you provide the workforce a transition so that you can get the people skilled to do the skilled jobs. And that's something we work with the forum on quite a bit, is the just transition of the workforce. But the second point is, in the United States, I was looking at the COVID map this morning, and in South Dakota, which is a very low population state, they're actually a hot spot. And it's because that's where the meatpacking industry is. And so you have the situation now where the workers are infecting each other in the meatpacking facilities. And so putting the workers in that proximity is actually driving infection rates. And so I think this is something where you make two very good points, Deepak. One is it's protecting the food, right? Minimizing human touch on food is important, and we should always drive that. Food should be food, and minimizing humans in the process is just better for safety. But now minimizing the humans in the food facilities is safe for the workers as well. And I think both of those are issues that we will address.
Well, that's great to know. So now, actually, as we have been talking about food, I think the COVID has opened up a big gap we as human beings we were having. We have not invested sufficiently in, one is healthcare. So you see, where we are today, specifically the very, very, I'll say that the developed economies like US and Europe, where there is a little bit aging population, and you start seeing that actually, we have failed miserably in getting beds to people. I've seen reports where in Italy, they have to decide whether to let the patient die or not to die because of various reasons, right? Because they were not having sufficient bag, they were not having sufficient people. So I am, in my view, as a layman, right, that the automation and robotics could have played a very, very vital role if we would have been smart enough to see that it's just not all the things need to be done by human beings, right? Such scenario robots can help. And then secondly, coming back to the food itself, that the supply chains are broken. You are having rationing of meat. We are having rationing of even the vegetables and the groceries in India, right? Where the disruption or the safety of the humans, because we believe that is more important than the economy, that had led to a lot of challenges, even in survival. So I would like you to focus on these two areas where you see robotics can impact, and how you see the technology evolving in healthcare and in agriculture and food.
Yeah, absolutely. And in healthcare, I think it's so important. And once again, I think this is an area where we haven't innovated, and we should, and we will now. Years ago, when Ebola was a problem, one of the challenges with Ebola is when they would have to put on these full suits to go treat the patients. And then they would have to come through an area, but they would need another healthcare professional, a doctor or nurse, to help them take off the suit, which is an infection risk. And we were approached and said, could you build a robot system that could help take the person? And so we had mocked up a remote control robot where someone could stand behind the glass and untie the suit and help the person without bringing a second person in. And we mocked it up and we presented it right as the Ebola crisis went away. And they said, oh, we don't need that anymore. Something like that, I think, could be unbelievably helpful today in minimizing exposure to the healthcare professionals. The other thing that we're seeing a lot of, and I think we'll see a lot of, is delivery robots inside hospitals, just for the movement of goods, with delivery of medicine, the movement of clean linens. Those have been in, I would say, early stage adoption over the past couple of years, but they're proven technologies, and they can minimize the number of people in the hospital. And so this is one where you just reduce the human density with these robotic systems. And I think those are two areas where I think robots can be very helpful in healthcare. Is we've looked at nursing assistants, looked at bringing robots into nursing homes, retired living facilities, to help with just some of the day-to-day tasks of delivering food, or working in the hallways, transporting materials, which robots are very good at. In warehouses, we transport materials every day. I think that's going to be a very important area, Deepak, because it's going to reduce the human density. And then we have found, unfortunately, in some of these retirement facilities where you have the most vulnerable populations, minimizing humans in and out of those facilities for an extended period of time is going to be important. So I do think we've talked, you have great surgical robotic companies like Intuitive Surgical and Vause, and Google and Johnson & Johnson have a robotics, surgical robotics. Medtronic has a surgical robotics. Those will continue to be great technologies, but now I think we can bring industrial robotics like material handling systems into the healthcare system to take some of the burden off of those essential workers, the nurses, the doctors in those facilities. So I think that is very interesting area for me.
I would just like to add here that I've seen robots delivering food in a Chinese hotel, right? Why we were not smart enough, right, as a society, not to have a nursing assistant as a robots, when the people like you have had that skill sets and capability of executing it. Maybe COVID will make us wiser, I believe. I also the same question which I've asked about, moving to food packaging we have talked about. Will we be seeing robots far more in the farms? Because that's another big challenge, right, which we are seeing, especially in Southeast Asia, where farmers, the on-field labor, they are not ready to be on fields nowadays, and that means the wastage of harvest.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're going to see significant uptake of food in this in agriculture. We've done quite a bit in that area. We've actually done prototype harvesting systems, but very similar to kind of the hospital environment is, it's a few early adopters that are adopting these technologies, and I think now you're going to see a much widespread adoption. I also think what's interesting about food is there's a lot of discussions happening now about advanced manufacturing and reshoring or onshoring due to the supply chain difficulties we're seeing right now. But you think if you're going to move a factory from one part of the world to another part of the world, that's multi-year and it's going to take a long time. And the thing about agriculture is you don't have to onshore the production. It's already there. It's the supply chain that's broken here. And so for just to be very candid, it's a simpler problem, and it's a more important problem. We're not talking about moving farms. We're just talking about bringing the technology to the farms and to the packaging facilities, and then bringing that efficiencies through the supply chain. And so I do think harvesting is a challenge, but I do think you're going to see much more innovation there. But where I think is very important that gets overlooked is the processing and the packaging. Today is unbelievably manual. It requires people. It's a low-paying job. You're working in a refrigerator in many environments, and so you're in a cold atmosphere. Very high turnover. We have customers that have 300-400% turnover in their packaging facilities because people just don't like the job. And I think that's where you're going to see the automation can come in and really accelerate it, because once again, it's the density in those buildings is very, very high. But at the same time, if you can't get the food out of the field into the packaging facility, you have a problem as well. So I think agriculture should be an important area of investment to bring advanced manufacturing technologies into that facility, because like I said, we don't have to move farms. We don't have to relocate locations of production. We have the production. We just need to figure out how to get it out of the fields and into the supply chain and into the consumer.
Awesome. In fact, I'll be more than happy, to work together on getting robots to the farms,
Yep.
right? Because
absolutely.
We work with a lot of even vertical farms are coming up in Middle East, where
Yes.
now they're smarter enough that they've already started talking about, can we put robots than human beings? Because even in vertical farms, when you're dependent on human beings and when you have lockdown, right, then the vertical farms, though it is 80% automated, still you're not able to get the food out of the vertical farm. So there are opportunities. I'll offline, I'll talk to you about those. Now that's bring us to something which I believe, other than these two sectors, according to you, which other sectors you see that post-COVID people would be more I'll say that open to use robots and automation?
I do think you picked two very important ones in healthcare and food. I think how we buy our groceries, that's still part of the food, but it's this. I always say, where food and e-commerce meet is grocery. And I talk to a lot of people who say they don't feel safe going into stores. And so a lot of grocery delivery has really taken off. Walmart in the United States, you can order your groceries online and you pull up in the parking lot and you just open the boot of your car and they put your groceries in and you drive off. I think this is going to change the way we buy food, and I think this is an opportunity where we can bring, once again, these technologies that are material handling systems, bring them out of the factory into a slightly different environment. A little bit of modification will be required, but it's not a problem, and really bring those efficiencies to better serve customers. I think we're going to see that. So I would say grocery. The other thing is interesting is moving from the large distribution center to smaller distribution centers, micro fulfillment, so that we can get things to you in a shorter period of time, get things closer. So I do see there's going to be fundamental transformation in the supply chain, all the way from, as you mentioned, the agriculture, food production, through how we buy food, to how we buy just about anything these days. And so I do see that will be an area of rapid change.
Awesome. That's a very, very useful insight for those who are looking to be in this domain, specifically the robotics. So that's I also strongly believe that actually end of the day, it would be easier for me that I sit in a car and the grocery is in my trunk. So that's an awesome example. And I look forward to that future. Now coming to a little bit on the personal areas, right? Carl, I would like to understand that you have been through the lockdowns, you have gone through the recessionary power of COVID, which we are seeing currently. You're running a company, you're running a family. I would like to understand how you were able to cope up with this personal crisis, this professional crisis, this economical downturn. I'm saying this crisis not with the sense of that it was a crisis, but actually, if you see, we have not, as a human being, we have not habituated of living like this, right? So it's a shock for all of us. So how Carl as an individual and Soft Robotics as a company what you did to cope up with this, and you are still looking as young as you used to look.
Yeah, thank you. I think what's really important is human beings need social connections, right? And I think that's very important. And I think that is something that is probably, both from a personal standpoint as well as a professional standpoint that we have to remember. And so we do, as a company, we do 2 all hands a week on Zoom. And it's kind of turned into a really fun thing where we share, wins. Has the sales team had a big win? Has the tech team hit a key milestone? So we're sharing those things with everybody so we can keep everybody involved, even though they're all locked down at their homes for the most part. That's so important, is keeping that communication, getting a chance to see everybody's face, and just, enjoy success stories and share information. Communication now is more important than ever. I think, there's so much information out there, both, good and bad, making sure that you're communicating with everyone, your family, your friends, your employees, your customers, is so important, because everyone is in the same situation. Everyone is struggling, and just being able to have those open lines of communication. I can tell you, I've been just reaching out to customers just to talk. Just, hey, how are you doing? How's everything going? Not a sales call, not anything other than just catching up with them. I think that's really, really important. But I think the most important is making sure you're doing those social connections. Here's one that one of our employees came up with, which was great, is we use Slack, like a lot of companies do, and there's a plugin in Slack that you may not be aware of called Donut. And what it does is you opt in, and then every week it sets up a random coffee meeting with you and another employee. And so the rules are, on Friday afternoon, you get your coffee meeting for the next week scheduled with a random employee, and you're not allowed to talk about work. And so we've got a chance now to kind of simulate just employees being in the building or having lunch together is, so you and I would just get on and just say, oh, what's interesting, or did you see this, or what did you do this weekend? And it's been a great way of making sure we get that social connection, and just everything's not a work meeting. So I think that's been, the biggest thing that's come out of it is the need for social interaction, and that being connected to other humans. And I think we've done a good job of that with the twice a week all hands, and then these random virtual coffee meetings we've been having.
That's great to know. And I heard a dog barking. So you also have a dog?
Yes, and so that's the other thing we're struggling with, is I have two children in middle school who are doing virtual classes now, which has been very difficult, because children in their teenagers like being around other teenagers, and then I have a dog. So yeah, you'll hear the dog barking, and so we're managing, trying to do work, trying to make sure that the children are getting their schoolwork done so they can complete their courses, and then entertaining the dog. And so it's pretty funny. Quite often the dog wants to come in on Zoom meetings and hears people talking behind doors. And so that's what you heard. So it's definitely a new way of working. And I think the other thing is we're really trying to appreciate some of the difficult situations people are in. We have employees who have young children, and so they're having to shift their work hours because there's no childcare right now. And so it's definitely a difficult situation. And I think the most important thing is understand everybody is in a difficult situation, and allow them to be open about the challenges, and help them solve for those challenges, whether it's working hours accommodation, or finding someone to take the dog out.
No, the reason I ask you this question is that actually, like, I also have a dog, and a lot of people we discuss that whether having a pet helps you mentally. So that's why I just wanted to know that, do you feel that it's good to have a dog in such tough times, or not to have a dog because they create far more mess than solutions?
I think I think it's a net positive, and I'll tell you why. Is the dog has to go for a walk, right? And so that forces me for the most part to find time to get outdoors every day. And I can tell you, getting outside and getting away from the computer and seeing the sun and getting a little bit of exercise is what we should all be doing. It's just hard to remind us, and so the dog makes sure I do that on most days.
That's awesome to know. So now, Carl, it was already a very insightful discussion we are having. Now I would like to pin you to 5 statements, right, which you would like to tell aspiring entrepreneur or a startup CEO how to cope up with COVID, so that when this all thing ends, they still have oxygen in them.
Yeah, so I'll come up with 2 more, but I think there's 3 things we talk about all the time. One is take care of the people, right? You got to take care of your employees at all times. I would even go back one step further and say, take care of yourself first and foremost, right? Because if you're not well, then the company and the venture is not going to be well. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself, getting outside, going for a walk, being safe. Second, the employees. Speak directly and honest to the employees. If the company is going to have to make hard decisions, be open with them, be honest with them, let them know what is happening, because everyone is fearful right now. So take care of your employees, both their safety, but communication. Take care of your customers. And like I mentioned, sometimes I just call my customers to talk to them because I know they're going through a hard time, but you still want to make sure that your customers know you're there for them, either professionally or just personally. And then the 4th thing would be cash, right? We have to, there's an old saying is to win the auto race, you have to still be on the last lap, right? You have to be in the race on the final lap to be able to win the car race. And I think that's important for startups right now, is you have to make some tough decisions. We've had to make some tough decisions around activities that we've put on hold to make sure that we can get through this and be ready to service the market and our customers when it comes back. And so that's 4. My 4 would be take care of yourself, take care of your employees, both their physical and mental well-being. Same with your customers. Service your customers, take care of your customers, make sure they know you're there. Take care of cash to make sure that the venture is sustainable post-COVID. And then the last thing I would say is really important is now is probably the best time to just reach out to your network, because everyone is trying to solve this problem. Everyone is in a lockdown. And I have found just having conversations with the network has both been mentally refreshing, but at the same time, people are coming up with innovative ways of solving some problems, whether it be virtual sales calls or customer engagement or marketing plans. I've picked something up from everyone. And I think people, I know I appreciate just taking a break and not having to sit down and focus on something intently. And so those would be my 5. Does that work for you, Deepak? Take care of yourself, take care of your employees, take care of your customers, take care of cash, and really do some virtual networking, do some non-work virtual networking, and find out how other entrepreneurs and maybe different industries are solving some of these interesting problems.
That's awesome to know. In fact, at least I'm doing the last thing already. I'm already reaching out to network,
absolutely,
talk and understand new areas, so that also for not just me. Actually, I keep on getting a lot of questions with the startups I am mentoring, the people I interact with, and I say that I'm not Einstein. So let me reach out to my network and put this question to them and seek the answers so that it will help everyone. So Carl, it's a pleasure and an honor to again talk to you, and thanks a lot for giving this time. It was as usual, as we keep on meeting in WF meetings. Meeting you virtually was also as interesting. Thanks a lot. Stay safe.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deepak. Thanks for doing this. It was my pleasure, and I hope to see you in person again soon. It'll be wonderful.
Look forward. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. God bless.